The last traditional 2D Metroid came out in 2004. That was Metroid Zero Mission, which was a remake of the first Metroid. 2004. It's been that long since we've got a traditional Metroid game, or a 2D traditional Metroid game. Obviously there was the Prime series, and then there were spin-offs like Metroid Prime Pinball and Metroid Prime Hunters, and other ones that I won't mention because they make people too angry. But yeah, we haven't seen a traditional 2D Metroid since 2004, but that has finally changed, and I guess it's pretty fitting because Metroid Samus Returns is a remake of the second Metroid game. So the last 2D Metroid we got was a remake of the first, and here we are with the second. I know it's a remake, but for all intents and purposes, it feels like a brand new game, and this is coming from someone who's played the original Metroid 2 a number of times. It feels like a brand new game, and it also feels like one of the best entries in the franchise overall. Now, you can't talk about Metroid Samus Returns without talking about Mercury Steam, the developer that Nintendo worked with on this game. Mercury Steam has a bit of history with the 3DS. They did Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate a number of years ago, and they're most well known for their work on the Castlevania franchise. They did Lords of Shadow, then they did Mirror of Fate, and then they did Lords of Shadow 2. Now here's where the terminology gets a little confusing. So, Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate was a 2D Castlevania game, but in the style of a Metroid game, which is what the series has been doing for a while and is known as a Metroidvania. But now, Mercury Steam worked on an actual Metroid game, which we don't call Metroidvania because it's just Metroid. Metroidvania is for games that combine Castlevania and Metroid together, so it gets a little confusing, but obviously, the work that Mercury Steam did on Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate was enough for Nintendo to be like, maybe they could actually handle a regular Metroid game. And that brings us up to this point. Going back to how I started this review, Metroid Samus Returns is a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus. Boy, that's not confusing at all. Which was originally on the Game Boy. And again, this game feels completely new to me. Obviously, the storyline shares most of the same beats, and some of the stuff was fleshed out, of course. But other than that, you know, the Game Boy game, I had vivid memories of playing it, but it was very repetitive, like obviously because of the Game Boy's power and because of the lack of color on the screen. Everything looked the same, and it was so easy to get lost in that game. And playing Metroid Samus Returns, areas are distinct. Areas have their very own vibe and feeling and look and design, and that keeps you from getting lost, which is eliminating what I found to be the big issue in the first game. So, but even if you played that game, this one is completely unrecognizable to the original. Like, yeah, maybe every once in a great while, if you did play the original, you'd be like, oh yeah, I recognize this point. And like I said, some story bits, and then obviously some of the Metroid enemies and stuff like that. Yes, you'll see the similarities or the callbacks, but by and large, this plays and feels and looks and sounds like a brand new Metroid game. Metroid Samus Returns is a remake or a reimagining of a game, but it does include some brand new stuff, and it's these brand new things that really make the difference here. Not only do they feel fantastic, but they are an important step for the franchise, and some of them could be applied to 3D Metroid games in the future as well, like Metroid Prime 4, but they make big strides for 2D Metroid, obviously, because this is a 2D Metroid. So one of the biggest changes is the free aiming. Now, instead of just having, like, you know, specific angles that you can aim at or just shooting, like, up, left, right, Samus can now free aim and, you know, take out an enemy at any angle, which is so satisfying. She, you know, you hold the shoulder button, she plants her foot, and you just aim wherever you want, and it feels so good. It might sound a little silly to be like, she can aim wherever she wants, like that's a big feature, but for those that have played the franchise, you know, that's not really a part of it. So having this amount of freedom over where you aim makes her feel so much more like deadly, so much more capable in the moment, and it gives you so many more options when you're fighting enemies or trying to take out walls or whatever it may be, because you can aim wherever you want, and it feels so good. And the thing that makes that feel even better is the new melee attack that she has, which it makes you feel like a badass. You feel awesome when you're doing it. So some enemies will like swoop in or jump at your attack, and you'll have a split second to counter it with a melee. You hit a button and it'll be a little slow-mo, and you'll counter them, and then you can use your free aim to take them out, and it just feels so good. You know, I've always had the feeling that Samus was a badass. Like, Samus is just really hardcore. Nobody messes with her because she can kick their ass. And these moves play into that character. character. It just feels right. It feels like these things should have always been a part of the game, and I imagine going back to play older Metroid games, it's gonna really make me miss miss the mechanics that are in this game. So going forward, I feel like these elements have to be a part of the game. Samus also gets a new set of abilities called Aeon abilities? Ion abilities? I don't know how you're supposed to say it. A-E-I-O-N. But anyway, new set of abilities. And this will give her a scan pulse and stuff for armor and stuff for shooting, above what you usually get in a Metroid game. And again, these feel great. These help make the franchise feel fresh. It's not like, hey, here's the old Metroid again. It's, hey, here's a Metroid, you know, remake, but it's going to feel completely new because of these things. And this is on top of the other stuff that you would expect in a Metroid game, like the grapple beam and missiles and all that stuff. So they add in unique wrinkles. The only one that I'm not really keen on, and that's just my personal preference, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, is Scan Pulse, because when I play a Metroid game, one of my favorite parts is going around and scouring the environment and searching every nook and cranny to find all the hidden energy tanks and missile upgrades and stuff like that. I like to do that on my own just by saying, that wall looks a little fishy or stuff like that. And Scan Pulse pretty much takes that away. You shoot out the Scan Pulse and it shows you, you know, where the paths are or where the blocks are to shoot. Not that there haven't been some elements slightly like that in other Metroid games, but this is really like, here's exactly where you go. And you can use it over and over again as long as you have the energy meter for it filled. So again, that's just the one out of the whole group that I'm not too keen on, but you don't have to use it, and I don't think it's bad. It's just, I like my Metroid where I explore on my own and I don't need the help of something like that. So that's what I chose to do. But for newcomers, obviously, it's going to be great. And to have it there as an option doesn't offend me at all. If you want to use it, you do. If you don't, you don't have to. So all these new abilities and features and stuff like that, thrown in with a remake that doesn't feel like a remake, it feels like a new game, it makes for an amazing experience. It's been so long, like I said, to have a new 2D Metroid, and again, while this isn't new, it feels new, it feels fresh, it feels like a rebirth for the franchise, and I hope it means that we're going to get more 2D Metroids in the future, because this feels like a great, like, you know, first step into the next generation of 2D Metroid games. It's a blast, it's huge, it's full of some unique challenges, there's all kinds of things to explore and different environments to run around in and hunt down all the collectibles for. It's just such a good, like, meaty experience. It's a great title. The best thing I could say about it is I didn't want it to end, and you know, that's always a compliment you want to hear about a game. No, they could have kept throwing content at me and I would have never gotten enough. With all that said, it's important to point out that Metroid Samus Returns has a really heavy burden on its back. For a lot of fans, this is the Metroid game that has to steer the franchise back in the right direction. Metroid Other M left a lot of fans with a really bad taste in their mouth, and I was one of them. I didn't think it was one of the worst games I've ever played. I did feel it was the worst Metroid game I've ever played, and by a good amount. And I felt it really hurt the character of Samus, and that really hurt me because I felt Samus was one of the strongest characters Nintendo had in their library. Something really unique, not just for Nintendo, but for the game industry as well. And when Other M came out, it ruined that. It ruined the mystique for me. Obviously, it didn't make the old games bad. That wouldn't make any sense. But going forward, there was damage done to the character. Then, when fans were still reeling from Metroid Other M, Nintendo announced Metroid Prime Federation Force. That was just not the right game at not the right time. Fans wanted something to fix the mistakes of Other M. They wanted an entry in the franchise to set things right. They weren't ready for a spin-off. They weren't ready for a unique art style like that. They weren't ready for, you know, gameplay mechanics that don't really mesh in with what the Metroid series is known for. So it just got crapped on. And I stand by that game. I played Federation Force and I really enjoyed it. But I do recognize that it came out in a time where it wasn't the right Metroid game. It wasn't what fans expected. It wasn't what fans wanted. And it wasn't what fans felt like they needed. So it got crapped on. And that brings us to now, when fans were waiting for something to set the franchise right. They wanted Prime 4. We are getting Prime 4. But before that, we got the other surprise announcement of Metroid Samus Returns. Nintendo needed this to be the game to turn things around for the Metroid franchise after the last couple missteps, and it indeed is. It plays great, it looks great, it sounds great, it has a nostalgic feel while bringing in brand new elements and new ideas. It's the perfect mix. It's exactly what the franchise needed, it's what Nintendo needed, and it's going to be what the fans want and need. I can't give it enough high praise. It's fantastic to see the Metroid series have a return to form. It makes me even more excited for the future. I get a feeling that Nintendo understands, you know, what went wrong and how to set things right, and Metroid Samus Returns is the first step of that, and Metroid Prime 4 is hopefully going to be the second step in that. But yeah, if you were worried that they were going to have things go wrong again, that is not the case at all. Nintendo and Mercury Steam have made an absolutely fantastic game. And like I said, it is a remake, but it feels brand new. If you haven't played the original, you need to play this game. If you did play the original, you need to play this game. It's one of the best games you'll play on the 3DS. It's one of the best entries in the Metroid franchise. It does a great job of making the original Metroid 2 into what Nintendo originally envisioned, because, you know, the power of the Game Boy and the ideas back then were great for what they were, but were limited. And the 3DS, obviously there's still limitations, but we get so much more out of it. And the world and the game and the ideas and all of it is just so much more realized this time around. It's a fantastic experience. If you haven't played your 3DS in a while, that's not an excuse to miss out on this game. Fire it up. Download this game, buy it at the store, whatever you're going to do. This is not one you want to miss out on. Hey guys, RMC here from Go Nintendo. If you like what you saw in the video, why don't you give us a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe? We'd love to have you. If you want to see what else we're up to, you can check out GoNintendo.com for 24-hour Nintendo news. You can visit us on Facebook at Facebook.com/GoNintendo. You can check us out on Twitter at Twitter.com/GoNintendoTweet. And we're even over on Instagram at Instagram.com/GoNintendo. I put all the links in the description just to make it easier for you guys to follow. Thanks a lot.